Right. Now I am going to start the first unit from the Constitution of India, especially the syllabus provided here is the unit 1, that is history of making of Indian Constitution and history of drafting committee. So in your syllabus it is given historical background of evolution of Constitution of India, framing of Constitution of India and Constitution Assembly drafting committee. So in this unit I am going to discuss about the historical background, especially the free independence, like before independence, like from 1857 onwards. First revolution started from 1857. From that day onwards, I am going to explain in a chronological manner about the historical background regarding the constitution, what are the developments done by the British government for the promotion of the Indian economic, social development. At the same time, after getting independence, how we made the Constitution of India, what is the drafting committee, what is the Constituent Assembly, how many members are there in the Constituent Assembly, okay, how many groups are there. Regarding that information, I am going to explain in this first unit. Okay, so I'll explain in this first unit about the historical background of preparation of Constitution of India. Complete information I'll give. Hello everyone, I am here going to discuss about the Constitution of India. Okay, so first I'll start with the evolution of the Constitution of India. You can say the historical background of the Indian Constitution. In your syllabus, especially in unit 1, it is given clearly historical background of Constitution of India and drafting of Constitution of India. So first we will discuss about the historical background, then we will discuss the drafting of Constitution of India, we will see. Now the historical background of the Constitution of India, if you want to understand, first you should know about different regulations done and different charters are passed during the British rule, right? See, the historical background and evolution of the Indian Constitution can be traced to many regulations and acts, passed before the independence. Okay, before independence, okay, the British government passed so many regulations and acts. So from these regulations and acts, the Constitution of India mostly evolved. Okay, see, this can be summarized into two heads. One is company rule. Company here is East India Company. The British entered India in the form of trade with a company name called East India Company. Okay, right? East India Company, EIC you can say, East India Company. Okay, so the company rule is actually from 1773 to 1858. Okay, started after British was granted Diwani rights. Okay, Diwani rights post its viceroy in the Battle of Bajar. In 1764, after the war, they got the Diwani rights, and from that they started this company rule, East India Company rule. Then this was up to 1858. Then after that, the crown rule, means the British king and queen, they ruled India from 1858 to 1947. During this period, there are so many regulations and acts were developed. Based on that, the Constitution of India was evolved. So I am dividing into two parts, company rule and crown rule. So during this company rule, you can see the timeline of this historical background. See here. Now you can see here the arrival of British as traders, East India Company in India in 1600. Okay, they entered at 1600, and 1765 they got the rights of Diwani. Diwani rights they got. Who gave that one? Shah Alam gave that one. Then from 1773 through a regulating act up to revolution of 1857, the company rule was there. During this company rule, there are so many acts and regulations passed. See here, the first regulating act 1773, then Act of Settlement, then Pitt's India Act, then Chartered Act 1813 and 1833, Chartered Act 1853. Then after that, the revolution of 1857 happened. This is the company rule. Then after that, the crown rule. See, after that crown rule, the Government of India Act in 1858, right? Indian Council Acts of 1861, 92, 1909 respectively, and Communal Award, Government of India Act 1919, Government of India Act 1935, and Indian Independence Act 1947. So there are so many regulations and acts. So through the Constitution of India is evolved actually from these many regulations and acts actually. It's not prepared in 1 month. Okay, over a period of time it was evolved actually. Most of the things from Government of India Act 1935 we took, most of the regulations we took from the Government of India Act 1935. So in these acts and regulations we will discuss important concepts. Okay, now important concepts for your exam. Right. Now let us consider the constitutional development under the company rule. Okay, under the company rule. First one, Regulating Act of 1773. Regulating Act of 1773. The Governor of Bengal was designated as Governor General of Bengal. Remember, before this act, generally the Governor of Bengal was there. Then after this act, the Governor General of Bengal and Governor of Madras and Bombay were made subordinate under the Governor General of Bengal. So the Governor General of Bengal is top and subordinates Governor of Bombay and Governor of Madras. They are subordinates, means they are reporting to the Governor General of Bengal. Right. Here, central administration started from the Regulation Act of 1773 with a Court of Directors, COD, here it is Court of Directors. COD means Court of Directors. Court of Directors, okay, was required to report on its revenue, civil and military affairs in India. Remember, Court of Directors was required to report on its revenue. Suppose in India, how much tax we are collected, how much we are spending, how much amount of money you are spending for military expenditure. So we require the permission from the Court of Directors. There are some like British IAS officers will be there, some ministers will be there. So they are acting as a Court of Directors. So the Governor General of Bengal, Governor of Madras and Bombay, they should get the permission from the Court of Directors. And in 1774, the first Supreme Court of India at Port Williams in Calcutta. Okay, na? So first Supreme Court was evolved in 1774 in Calcutta. So remember, first Supreme Court was evolved in Calcutta. The first Governor General of Bengal is Warren Hastings. First Governor General of Bengal is Warren Hastings. So this is the information about Regulating Act of 1773. Then after that, 1784 Pitt's India Act. Okay, Pitt's India Act. In this Pitt's India Act, major modification is dual system of government. Dual system of government, see here, Court of Directors for commercial functions, Board of Control for political functions. See, remember, through this Pitt's India Act, what they thought, there must be two boards must be present. One is for the commercial functioning purpose, one is for the political functioning purpose, means they involved to enter into the politics also in this 1980s. They want to rule India, that's why they involved in political also. So, Board of Control is actually for political functions. There are some members are there, right? And Code of Directors for the commercial functions to do the trade, they are using Court of Directors. to do the political functions, they are doing board of control, right? The company's territories were called British possession in India. So the British occupy some space, some places in India. The name we call it as British possessions in India. Board of control was empowered, thus giving British government supreme control over the company's affair. Now listen, see, up to this Pitt's India Act, the company is going to run its own trade. Okay, company is the final in India. But after this Pitt's India Act, Board of Control was got more empowering. So it will control East India Company also, right? British government is the major supreme control through the board of control. British government is the supreme control over the company's affairs. So this is the information about Pitt's India Act. This is the information about Pitt's India Act, right? So after Pitt's India Act, now the next one is Chartered Act 1813. Okay, Chartered Act 1813 ended East India Company's monopoly over trade. So initially East India Company came to the India and they started doing trade. It is one company in Britain. But through this chart, actually through Pitt's India Act, the British government took over the control over the East India Company, and British government is allowed every merchant to India. So that's why the monopoly of East India Company was ended, except trading with tea and opium. Trading with tea and opium and trade in China also, right? The financial provisions for promotion of science and literature. So the company and the government, British government, gave some financial support for the helping of the natives, especially Indians, for the education, literature point of view. So science and literature point of view, some financial provision is given through this act. The allocation of sum of 1 lakh rupee given. That time for the education purpose in India, they gave 1 lakh rupees for the purpose. But don't think that they are giving don't think that they are generous. They are not generous. They theft lot of our money and they are giving very small amount of money to us for the development. Okay now? And Chartered Act 1833. Now in this Chartered Act 1833, centralization was started actually. So up to 1833, there is a Governor General of Bengal. Now after this 1833, Governor General of India means it will represent throughout the India, means most of the places are occupied in India, these people. Okay, Governor General of Bengal was made Governor General of India. The another name for this Chartered Act 1833, Saint Helena Act actually. No need to remember, leave it. The legislative powers of Bombay and Madras presidencies were removed. So legislative powers of Bombay and Madras were removed. Okay, and failed attempt to introduce a system of open competition for civil services. Actually, they started civil services in India, but it was failed actually. And Law Commission under Lord Macaulay to codify Indian laws. So remember, to codify Indian laws, to frame the Indian laws, through this chart it is possible. The Law Commission under Lord Macaulay ended the company's monopoly of trade in tea and trade with China. So complete East India Company monopoly was ended. The first Governor General of India was actually Lord William Bentinck. You don't need to remember, but at least you should remember the points what I am discussing here for your exam. So they may ask you the historical background of the Constitution of India. Then if you remember at least some of these points, then it is easy to write. That's why I am explaining. And one more, the Chartered Act 1853. Okay. See, for the first time the legislative and executive powers of the Governor General's Council were separated. So in a Governor General Council, legislative powers and executive powers are separated. Generally at this point, at this moment, at this time, executive powers are vested through the IAS, IPS officers, legislative powers are for the MLAs and MPs, like that. So they are separated. So that it marks the beginning of parliamentary system in India. So remember, so parliamentary system in India started actually by the separation of legislative and executive powers through the Chartered Act 1853. Okay, na? Chartered Act, through Chartered Act 1853, this parliamentary system was developed. Before that, the complete king's rule actually. Okay, na? It introduced for the first time local representation in India in central legislative council. So this is also another basic important initiative. So here for the central legislative councils, local representatives are also allowed. Suppose a local representative, if there is any king, if he want to enter into that legislative council, they are allowed. Through a vote system what not came, but they allowed. Okay, na? So remember this. So this is Chartered Act 1853. So all these are the evolution of the Indian Constitution through the company rule. During this period, company rule. So you should remember some of the basic points here. See here, Governor General of Bengal first, central administration started, Court of Directors, first Supreme Court, Court of Directors and Board of Controls, Court of Director for commercial functions, Board of Control for political functions, and also British government empower this rule, control over the company's rule. So company's rule completely gone, and then East India Company monopoly is ended, and then financial provision for education is given, 1 lakh rupee, like that. For education point of view, science and literature they encouraged. Okay, and also Governor General of Bengal is converted into Governor General of India. Then civil services started, but it was failed. Okay, Indian laws, codifying Indian laws, they implemented through the Lord Macleay, and ended the company's monopoly completely, right? So these are the developments evolved in this period, in the company's rule time. Okay, na? See, the company rule, you can see the timeline here. The company rule is present up to 1857. Okay, na? In that period, 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny happened. Okay, the soldiers revolt against the British. You can say it is initiative for good government of India actually. From here, the good government of India, there are so many government of India acts happened, regulations happened for the purpose of getting good government. So the first war for independence, we can say this one, first war for independence. Remember that. So after this, the Government of India Act 1858. The Government of India Act 1858. What are the regulations done here? We will see. See here, transferred Governor of India from companies to the British Crown. Okay, see, actually up to 1857, the East India Company ruled actually. Only some partial powers were there for the British Parliament or British Crown. But after 1857, the complete powers taken by the British government. Okay, the East India Company powers completely gone. Right. The Governor General of India was designated as Viceroy of India. Remember. So after this 1857 revolt, the Viceroy of India is evolved. So Governor General of India gone. And also Board of Control and Court of Director. See, Court of Director for the commercial functions, Board of Control for the political function, both are abolished. Directly, Secretary of States was developed or evolved, established. Secretary of States means there was a one person from the British cabinet come to India, and he will go through all the things like commercial affairs, political affairs, everything. Right. So Secretary of State actually came from British cabinet actually. He usually go through all these things actually. Okay. And abolished board of control and code of directors, that ending the dual system was ended completely. The first viceroy of India was actually Lord Canning. The first viceroy of India was actually Lord Canning. This is after revolt 1857, Sepoy Mutiny, first war of independence. Now, another regulation, that is Indian Council Act of 1861. Indian Council Act of 1861. Okay. Actually, from here, representative institutions were started. Means local peoples are also going to enter into the legislative councils. Beginning of representative initiatives. Initiated decentralization as a legislative powers of Bengal and Madras. Previously, the legislative powers of Bengal and Madras were removed under centralization. Governor General of India, Governor General of Bengal and Governor General of India was there. He is going through all the details about India, the British occupied places, right? But after this act, these decentralization happened. So through the decentralization, legislative powers of Bombay and Madras were restored. And recognized portfolio systems and ordinance powers of the viceroy. So portfolio systems recognized, like now you can say the portfolios of cabinet, like home minister, defense minister, like that. So this type of portfolios were started, and new legislative councils established at Bengal, Punjab and northwest provinces. Okay, na? New legislative councils also established in Bengal, Punjab and northwest provinces. Right. Now, see here, Indian Council Act of 1892. Okay. So, as per this act, increase the number of non-official members in the central and provincial legislative council. So, number of members increased in the legislative council, okay, central and provincial legislative council. Increased functions of legislative council, like power to discuss budget. Actually, this was there in British Parliament actually. Before this act, the discussion of budget in the British Parliament, but now they gave powers to the legislative council to discuss about the budget. So, it's very good thing for the government. And Indian Council Act of 1909, we call it as a Minto-Morley reforms or Morley-Minto reforms. Increase size of central and provincial legislative council. So, central legislative council and provincial means state level MLAs. You just remember like that. Central level means like MPs. State level means MLAs. But that time MLA MPs were not there. Legislative council is there. Legislative council member were there. So, central some members, state some members. Okay. Size increased. Separate electorate for Muslims. So, for the Muslims, they gave separate electorates actually to cast a vote, and enlarged deliberative functions of legislative council, like suggestions and questions and resolutions of on budget. So, the more powers they gave to the legislative council, you can say, right? And Indians in executive council, example, let us say Satyendra Prasad Simha. See, Indians in executive council, like you can say the IAS officers, they entered into the executive councils, right? Satyendra Nath Simha was the first person to enter into the executive council, right? And then Government of India Act 1909, okay, right? Montague-Chelmsford reforms, we call it as Montague-Chelmsford reforms. Introduction of responsible government. See, through this act, a responsible government was formed actually. Diarchy was introduced at provincial level, division into transferred and reserved subjects. Like you can say, education you can take nowadays. Education is a state subject. Defense is a central subject. Like that, the powers are divided, transferred and reserved. Reserved means some of the powers kept in the central level, some of the powers transferred to the provincial level, state level, like that. The ACE was formed actually, was introduced in 1909. Bicameralism at center was introduced. So at center, bicameralism means like at present Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha like that are there. Na? So this was introduced in 1909 at central level. For the first time, direct elections was done, but limited franchises. Okay, first time direct elections was done in through this Government of India Act 1909. Extended the communal representation 6 Indian Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. So for all these people, they are elected legislative council through the direct elections. Okay, this is the most good thing for the Constitution of India, evolution of the Constitution of India. Now, see here, another one, the Government of India Act 1935. So majority of the regulations were passed in through this act actually, and most of the laws or regulations actually at present in the constitution was taken from this act only. Now see, the establishment of All India Federation, comprising of provinces and princely states. So all over India, some places ruled by the kings, that place we call it as a princely state, and the place ruled by the British government, that we call it as a provinces. So All India Federation was formed, and the powers listed in 3 form, like federal power, provincial power and concurrent power. Concurrent power means the powers exist for the central and state both. Okay, abolished diarchy at provincial level and introduced it at the central level. So this diarchy introduced at the central level. See here, diarchy was introduced at the provincial level, division of transferred and reserved subjects actually. So this was abolished actually. Okay, bicameralism at provincial level also means, bicameralism means like MLCs and MLAs, legislative council, legislative assembly, like that. At present I am taking 2 Sabha, Egwa Sabha, Digwa Sabha we call it as. Okay na? At central level Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, state level Rashtra Mantri, like you can say MLCs and MLAs, both were there. This is council, this is legislative assemblies. So bicameralism, this was started in 1935. Extended communal representation like depressed classes, women, labor, for all these they allowed to cast their vote in the electoral form. Establishment of RBI, Reserve Bank of India, and federal courts also happened in this 1935 Act. And finally, India's Independence Act 1947. So we got independence, right? Through this act, end of the British rule. British rule was ended through this Independence Act 1947. Abolished the office of Viceroy and Secretary of States. So office of Viceroy and Secretary of States were abolished. Empowered Constituent Assembly. So this Constituent Assembly is actually assembly consists of Indian members, Indian people, Indian representatives. They prepared, they actually drafted the Constitution of India. So the power given to this Constituent Assembly, the British government gave power to this Constituent Assembly to form their own rules, like to form Constitution of India, to conduct elections, all these things. Okay, frame and adopt the Constitution. Freedom to princely states to join the dominion of India or Pakistan or remain independent. So some of the princely states were present, right? So these princely states, like they given freedom to the princely states, either if you want to join, you can join in India, or if you want to join, you can join in Pakistan, or you can remain independent, like that. Freedom given to the princely state. So this is the Act, Independence Act 1947. So through these many acts, through these many acts and regulations, the evolution of the Constitution actually taken. Evolution of the Constitution actually taken place. Okay, na? So for your exam point of view, from this, what type of question they will ask, So explain the historical background of Constitution of India, like that they will ask. So if you write something, then better to remember this timeline. Remember this timeline and explain at least for one act, one regulation, 2 points or 1 point, that is more than enough. So if you explain like that, that is more than enough. Okay, na? So they will ask you from this historical background, one question they will ask you, explain the historical background for the development of drafting a Constitution of India. This type of question they may ask you. So you should write the timeline like this, and you should write the important points from the each act and regulation. That is more than enough for your exam.